When it comes to making a big bang entry into the Indian market, MG, or Morris Garages as they're known, has certainly made a big impact. Their first SUV, the Hector, has been quite a success. They've been doing decent sales numbers. The recently launched Hector Plus has also seen decent amount of customer response. But with their next product, the Gloster SUV that you see right next to me, they're looking to really get into the big league. The Gloster is massive. It's really big, it's butch, it's in your face. But with this new SUV, what is MG offering to Indian customers? We drive it today to find out. Now, when I say that MG with the Gloster is looking to make it into the big league, I really mean the big league. The Gloster is huge. It's just a smidgen under 5 meters. It's longer than the Ford Endeavour, it's longer than the Toyota Fortuner, and it certainly has massive road presence. For me though, the best angle of the Gloster has to be the front. The grille is quite large, but given the overall proportion of the car, it doesn't look out of place. I quite like the headlights, and the front is a really imposing angle. It's a unique design identity, and with the oversized MG badge right in front of you, you will not mistake the Gloster for anything else on the road. But there's one big difference in the MG lineup now. The Hector, if you look at it front on, has a huge amount of chrome. That's been one of its success points. The Indian customers have really loved the chrome front of the Hector. The Gloster, at least in the test car that we're driving, doesn't have that much chrome. In fact, the chrome is quite restrained, and that in my books is quite a big positive, but how customers react to it will be something that we'll have to see later. When you look at the side profile design of the Gloster, it's largely very impressive other than a few niggles here and there. I'll come to the more impressive parts first. Overall, given the size of the Gloster at 5 meters, the design is quite balanced. The front and rear overhangs are not too large, and that gives it a very balanced stance. I also quite like the strong shoulder line running through the front rear door and the rear quarter panel. There's also a swooping line coming through the front fender into the middle of the front door. And of course, MG wants you to remember that they are, or rather were, a British brand, and so in both front doors, this side and the driver's side, you get this sort of badge on it which says Brit Dynamic with the British Union Jack flag. Well, that's just a way for the brand to sort of talk more about their British identity and their British origins rather than their current ownership. One factor, the side profile design, that doesn't work that well for the Gloster are the wheels. Existing wheels are 19 inches fitted with 255/55 tires, which are quite large. I quite like the dual finish wheels, but given the overall size, they do look a little small. There's too much gap between the wheel arch and the wheel, and I think maybe 20 inches would suit the car a bit more. When it comes to the rear end design of the Gloster though, for me it's a bit of a hit and a miss. You see, the front and the profile design of the Gloster is quite restrained, not too much chrome, but MG has overdone it when it comes to the rear end. Of course, there's the oversized MG badge, there's the chrome strip here, which is fine. You get the 4-wheel drive ADAS badging on one side, Internet Inside on the other side, but it's this big Gloster name, individual letters plastered across the tailgate, the quad tailpipes. I think that's a little bit much. It's overtly sort of flashy. Some customers really like it, but for me, I think a smaller Gloster badge and maybe simpler tailpipes would have been better, but I think it's an individual choice. For me, the rear end doesn't work that much. Overall, the Gloster though looks quite balanced, looks much better proportioned than the Hector looked, and still has a very distinct identity which can only work in its favor. If there's one thing you would expect getting into the Gloster, having looked at its size, it would have to be the amount of space available. And I would have to say that you would not be disappointed. I've just tested the Gloster in all 3 rows of seating, and I fit comfortably in all 3 rows. So with the driver's seat set to my height, with the second row seat fully set back to its backward-most position, I can still fit in the 3rd row. And there's enough headroom, there's enough shoulder room. So the good part is that for 6 full-size adults, the Gloster is going to be a good place to be. The other feeling that you get is of quite impressive quality, largely speaking. I like the quilted leather design of the seats. That brown shade is quite nice, and this nicely leather-lined dash also cuts a nice figure. This large multimedia touchscreen also works quite well. Has Apple CarPlay, has Android Auto, has the Gaana app built in, so you can use that to play content that you might not have on your phone. It of course has all the MG iSmart functions, so you can ask MG to control the sunroof, to control the volume, You can also remotely start the car, do other functions. So from the tech perspective, the MG Gloster is certainly loaded much more than the Hector, which is something that you would certainly expect, and that is impressive. Like I said, coming back to the quality aspect, largely the quality of the Gloster inside the car feels quite good. Most of the surfaces are leather lined, they feel quite nice to touch. This sort of matte aluminum kind of finish also works quite well. The switches work well. There's a nice color screen in the instrument cluster right in front of the driver, which has great graphics, lots of colors, which is easy to read, and there are also analog dials for the speedo and the rev counter. The steering of the Gloster also comes with a bunch of controls. You can use the cruise control functions, you can use voice command, you can control the multimedia system. You also get paddle shifters for the 8-speed automatic transmission, as well as automatic headlights and front and rear wiper functions. One aspect of the Gloster that I'm not so impressed with, you get these seat controls, seat heating, seat cooling, the hill descent control, the automatic start stop. They feature these amber lights that tell you whether they're functioning or not functioning, or what setting you're in. And in the daylight, the amber light is actually very difficult to spot unless you put your hand over it to sort of put it in the shade and see if it's functioning or not. So obviously that's something you can't do while you're driving. So that is one aspect of the Gloster that can certainly be improved upon. The second row of the Gloster is also quite a nice place to be. You get lots of space inside, so you get enough leg room, shoulder room, headroom. And the panoramic roof really also lifts the sort of ambience of the cabin. You feel like you're sitting in a much larger cabin that you are. There are a couple of issues with the MG seats though. Both the driver's seat and the second row seat, they're very comfortable, they're good looking, but in both seats, there's not enough under thigh support. So on long journeys, I think that's going to be a bit of a bother, especially if you're 6 feet tall or taller than that. Now, everything aside, the first impression that the Gloster makes on you when you start it about to drive off is that of refinement. The engine noise in particular has been contained really well, and I think while you're driving, even if you have a slight bit of music on, it's very difficult to hear the engine from within the driver's seat or anywhere in the cabin, which is a very good thing. I just turned off the AC before we started off, just to give you an impression of how sort of refined it is inside the Gloster's cabin. So I'm going to switch the AC back on. It's 39 degrees and really hot right now. Now, staying on the theme of the engine, the Gloster is powered by a 2-liter twin-turbo diesel power plant. This is quite a decent output engine. It puts out about 215 bhp, 480 Nm of torque, which is accessible from just 1500 RPM. It's also paired to an 8-speed gearbox, which I have to say shifts fantastically well. In most conditions, I've been driving the Gloster all day today. I've not had to resort to manual changing via the steering mounted paddles or using the gear lever, and the gear shifts are really smooth, imperceptible, and I think it's a really good box, especially compared to most of the automatic gearboxes that the competition offers. The other thing that's also impressive about the Gloster is that it features a lot of ADAS systems. What is ADAS, you ask? They are automatic driver assistance systems. Basically, they're safety systems that try to mitigate or reduce any kind of mishap that you can get in while you're driving. So let's say if you're distracted and the car in front of you suddenly brakes, the Gloster will automatically apply its brakes. It also has an automatic lane detection system. So if you're not paying attention and you're sort of about to veer off from one lane onto the other, it'll start warning you that that's happening. If there is a vehicle next to you on both sides in the blind spot, it also has a blind spot alert that will tell you about it. It also has a smart cruise control, which maintains distance from the vehicle in front of you. So that is one thing that the Gloster is very unique in offering. It's something its competition doesn't offer in India, and depending on how it's priced, it might be the first vehicle of its kind, of its price in India, offering all these smart features. Now, most of these features are already very popular in Europe, in the US. In fact, some of the luxury cars sold in India, like the S-Class, like most Volvos, are already equipped with them. But anything in the not so luxury segment, in the more premium mass market segment, that these features have not been offered, and the Gloster will be the first car to offer these. And similarly, it keeps up the feature list. If you look at the Hector, that was also a car that really offered features no other car in its segment or even segments above did. And it's the same story with the Gloster. You get adaptive LED headlights. I'm sure they're great. I haven't driven the Gloster at night, so I can't tell you about them without that. But on the features list, that's there. You also get dual front airbags, side airbags, and full length curtain airbags. You get ABS, EBD, hill descent control. You get different driving modes. You can put it into sport, you can put it into snow mode, and there's a sand mode and there's a rock mode. For rock mode, you know, like the badge on the tailgate of the Gloster said, 4-wheel drive. It also gives you a locking differential that you can use in case you're looking to go off-roading with the Gloster. It's a pretty big vehicle to be doing serious off-roading, but it's always a good peace of mind reassurance to have that if needed, if you need to tackle some bad roads, maybe take it off-road a little bit, maybe there's a jam on the road, the Gloster is capable of that, and it also has pretty good ground clearance to help you with that. It also features all-wheel disc brakes. So I think, you know, all taken into account, interior features, the comfort features, you get multi-zone climate control. The Gloster will be fully loaded or is fully loaded. How is it to drive though? Well, refinement aside, the engine's quite powerful. I have only driven it with 2 people, so that is something that I'll come back to later. But the performance feels quite adequate. Like I said, the gearbox, fantastic shifting, the engine's refined. With its 215 bhp, 480 Nm, it moves quite quickly. It's not the fastest car in the world, but given its size and its weight, which will be around the 2.5 ton mark, I think, it's decently quick. But I have a little bit of an apprehension low down, especially when you're moving in slow moving traffic. There seems to be a bit of a flat spot when you sort of use part accelerator to try and get some input going. You really have to push the accelerator about halfway through to really make the Gloster move, and that's something that MG should rectify before they launch it. A little bit of immediate throttle response will make it much better to drive when stuck in traffic or when you know, see a quick gap opening and you need to get through it. So that is one factor that has to be improved upon. Secondly, that 215 bhp sounds good in isolation, but with 6 passengers on board with luggage, that's something to be seen whether it will be quick enough or whether the Gloster will be a bit laborious to drive. One more factor that has to be considered, all 3 rows in use, all 6 or 7 passengers inside the car. The boot space in the Gloster is very limited, so that's going to be a compromise. If you're going to be 5 or 6 or 7 adults or even 7 occupants in general going on a long road trip, there's very, very little boot space. In fact, I don't think it can fit even one large suitcase. So that will be a factor against the practicality of the Gloster. Lastly, what do I think about the Gloster overall? Well, you see, it offers a lot of things that its competitors doesn't. It looks good, it's big, it's got great interior space, it's got a phenomenal set of standard equipment that is being offered with the SUV. Whether you talk about safety equipment, whether you talk about advanced driver assistance systems, whether you talk about frills, air conditioning or comfort or ventilated seats, it's got it all. I don't think there's much missing or anything that you can say that the Gloster doesn't have. But there are a few compromises with the Gloster. Like I said, the seats don't have enough under thigh support. Boot space with all 3 rows is a problem. And also, while the ride quality of the Gloster is simply fantastic, I've driven it today on bad roads, on non-existent roads, on fast roads. It really smothers out all kind of bad surfaces. Its high-speed cruise is also pretty good. I was doing about 120 kilometers an hour. That's the speed limit on the Taj Expressway, and it was stable as a rock, and that is not a problem. But 2 things in the driving that can also be improved upon. One, the steering is too light. That's very good when you're sort of trying to park the humongous Gloster or when you're stuck in traffic conditions inside the city. But once out on the highway, or if you're trying to throw the car around, I would like a little bit more weight. Even in sport mode, the steering doesn't have enough weight, and I think that's certainly something that could be improved upon. Second, I've already mentioned that at small throttle application, it needs to have a little more engine response. And thirdly, there's a significant amount of body roll with the Gloster. If you try and put it into a fast corner or try and take in roundabout quite aggressively, you can literally feel that mass and that high center of the gravity of the Gloster sort of literally tilting you. That's something that I would have liked mitigated a little bit, maybe slightly stiffer suspension to give it a little more body control. But I think there are two factors that we have to consider when we look at the Gloster in the context of the Indian customer. One, most customers buying the Gloster will be chauffeur driven. So I don't think that body roll is going to be a problem for them, and neither is it going to be a major engine power delivery issue. The chauffeur will take care of that. But the biggest factor is going to be what the Gloster is priced at. It has features that none of its competitors offer. It has space that I don't think its competitors offer, but we'll do a comparison test of the Gloster sometime next month and let you know exactly how much the differences are. So combining the extra space and the extra features, if the Gloster can undercut the Endeavour or the Fortuner or even be priced at par with them, it's going to be a phenomenal product because it will offer a lot more bang for your buck. If it's priced above them, then the obvious question will be that is the customer willing to pay a premium over a Fortuner? Well, that's something we'll find out once we know the prices and MG launches the Gloster into India.